But let's go. Okay, so last class. So first of all, welcome everyone who I haven't seen in a long time. Where's the funny lady that sits here? She's also not here. Okay, who knows where everyone is? Hopefully we'll see them in Pesach. Okay. In Pesach, everyone goes to Cancun, not to Israel. Ah? Not us. Yeah, why go to Cancun? Ah? Okay, so last time we had class, we spoke about Yom Kippur, so we're not speaking about that. But before last time we had class, we were in the middle of a series. I don't know who remembers anything, but you remember everything. No, you're like, no, it's okay. The class holds on its own. But pretty much we said a few principles. We started from zero. My first point was God needs you. Yes, because everything was great by God, but he decided that there's no point in being God and being good and being a giver if there's no one to give to. Obviously, we taught a whole entire class about what does it mean God needs you. And I said there are needs that are intrinsic and make you codependent, and then there are needs that are created. Like I need to eat, but some people want to eat organic. It's not the same thing. When I want to eat organic, that's a need, but it's a need that betters my life. And therefore, the reason why I have that need is because it will directly affect my happiness, everything that I have in my life. God doesn't need you like you need to eat, because if not, he wouldn't be able to exist without us. But he created us because that improves his existence. Obviously, everything is quote unquote, but God doesn't feel fulfilled in a certain way if he cannot give. So that was point number one. And we also said, for anyone that doesn't remember, but I'm not going to do such a good summary every time. But so we said, if you understand that, then the happier you are, the happier than God is. Yes, because God created you to be able to fulfill himself. And like real giving in a way is selfish. I'm not taking care of my body, but I'm taking care of my soul. Yes, if all of us would give because I want to be a better person, because I want to be godly, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what anyone needs. What matters is I want to give because that makes me better. That was point number one. Point number two, then we said, when God created us, he needs to give to you. That means he needs to make a space for you. So it's not about him, it's about you. So the Kabbalah says that God created the world through something called tzimtzum, contraction, which pretty much means God makes a space inside of himself so that you can exist. And all of our free choice and everything that comes down to, we're going to talk about it today, is that, we live inside of God, but we're not really aware of God. We'll get to that today. But God decided that the greatest giving is to stop giving. Because if I give you everything, then I cannot give you the satisfaction of you giving to yourself. And then we gave a whole class. Everyone remembers this? No, fine. I said God is the Duncan Hines to your cookies. Do you remember Duncan Hines? She remembers Duncan Hines. This is why I have, expressions with cake. Women will always remember cake. Anyways, but God is the Duncan Hines to your cookies. We said that all of the creation of the world, it's like a pregnancy. You don't want to eat dairy because dairy hurts your gut, but then you're pregnant and all your baby wants is dairy, and you have it. Why? Because it's about you. It's not about me. Yes, every day. I gave a whole class about this. This is the last part of the summary. Every day we say in the Amidah, Hakel, Hagadol, Hagibor, Be'anorah. God is strong. What does it mean to be strong? God withholds from giving. The greatest level of tzedakah is giving you a job. Yes, is giving you, like when I'm doing a puzzle with my daughter and I say, where does the piece go? And then she puts it. I could have finished it for her, but I didn't finish it. So then we said, point number 3 or 4, that was the most important point. Yes, which sometimes God withholds from you. Why? Because he wants to give you the satisfaction and the pride of feeling that you did it. Like the show in Broadway that I went to, and he gave all of the stars, and we stopped talking. Okay, till here we're good. You're like, what's happening? It's okay, because you only came to a Yom Kippur one, so you don't remember. But it's all good. Everyone remembers this? Beautiful. Okay, so let's go deep. So if I am in God, but God is not where I am, in order to give me the space for the relationship and to make the choice and everything else, so then how do we bridge the gap? Yes, this is what we're going to talk about. So this is a very, very profound concept. I think this is an incredible concept. We'll get to it. So one time I was teaching Beis Yaakov girls in Neve. And one of the girls, I don't know what I was teaching about, one of the girls told me that she went off the derech at age 7. Because one day her teacher was singing a song, which all of you know this song, and then she asked a very deep question, which I think it's a very smart question, and I hope all children ask this question. But pretty much the song was, everyone always sings, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere, up, down, I don't know what else comes. So she said, what do you mean Hashem is everywhere? Is Hashem also in the toilet? It's a great question when you think about it. Yes, by the way, you know who has this question? Halacha. Yes, for example, in a Beit Midrash, you don't put a mezuzah. Why don't you put a mezuzah? I mean, nowadays we put a mezuzah everywhere because people are chatting in the Beit Midrash instead of studying Torah. But technically, according to halacha, you shouldn't, because the Beit Midrash is the house of God. So you shouldn't have to put a symbol that represents you should invite God. You should have so much awareness of God that you don't need a mezuzah. In the bathroom, you shouldn't put a mezuzah. Why? Because you shouldn't invite God to a bathroom. But now, does God expect you to live without Him in the bathroom? You know, it's a pretty deep question when you think about this. Because you're not allowed to think about halacha, but at the same time, can you be in a place that is devoid of God? You can ask this question about everything. Does God create Hamas or does God not create Hamas? If Hamas is devoid of God, so then how could it exist? Because nothing can exist if God is not within it. Yes? But if you're saying that God created Hamas, you could do this for everything that you want in life. This is actually one of the most famous questions in the Torah. There was a huge debate between the Vilna Gaon and the Hasidic Rebbes about this question. Okay? I'm sure that you've heard this line from Hasidic people. Not really, it's not like from Hasidic people. Everyone says this line, but the source is actually, I think, the Baal Shem Tov, that pretty much says, not even a leaf of grass moves without God, intending it to. But the Vilna Gaon says that's not true. What, do you think God is involved in every single, there was a tsunami. You think God got involved in every single Thailand person? No, that's not Thailand. Yeah, it is Thailand. Okay, I'm good. Every single Thailand person that happened, one of the principles in the Torah is that there's something called Ashgacha Pratit, right? Individual supervision. According to a Vilna Gaon, not everyone gets individual supervision. How do you know? I'm not going to resolve all of these questions today because then that would be very deep. But think about it. Yes, there's a concept in Judaism. We always say this. I know I'm getting you confused, but don't worry. We're going to get somewhere. That nothing can happen to you if God doesn't want it to be. This is what everyone always says. At the same time, there's also this concept called Meshane Makom, Meshane Mazal. If you change your place, you can change your destiny. Really, Mazal doesn't mean destiny. It means the flow of whatever is going to happen to you in your life. So then ask the obvious question that you have to ask. If it's supposed to happen, why changing place is going to make it like it doesn't happen? Yes? And if it's not supposed to happen, what? Just because I was in Thailand in that tsunami, then it's going to happen? Like the whole entire Torah is full of these things of like, so apparently there is Ashgacha, but there's also ways of not getting Ashgacha. There's also ways of skipping the Ashgacha. We say En Mazal Israel. The Jewish people have no Mazal. But at the same time, we're also saying, that whatever has to come to you will come to you wherever you are. All of these questions, even though they sound very confusing, they have to do with the same thing. Why? Because let's go back. If God is everything and you're inside of God, but in that space, God vacuumed himself, so there's a confusion. Because here, there's no God, but everything is God. So at the end of the day, is there God? Is there no God? That's this week's parasha. Adam is hiding. The whole entire Torah is hide and seek. If you really think about it, when do you have to hide? If you don't see me, I don't have to hide because anyways, you don't see me. The fact that Adam had to hide means that before he was hiding, God was completely revealed. Yes? Think about this. If not, I wouldn't have to hide. So the whole entire Torah is full of these things. So where is God? Is God everywhere? Is God nowhere? How do you understand this? So let's start from zero. This is one of the most profound things and also one of the most comforting things that I have ever come up with in my life. Anyways, when a person, Bar Minam Lo Aleinu, is sitting Shiva, you always say a beautiful pasuk. What do you say? You say, Hamakom yenachem etchem v'toch sha'arei avelei Tzion beYerushalayim. The place should comfort you. This is what you say. The place should comfort you. we see that one of the names of God is called the place. But almost no one ever uses this name. The only one that ever used this name was Moshe Rabbeinu at the end of his life when he had to come to peace with the terms that he's not going to Israel. So he goes, Hashem tzur pa'alot amim, you are the rock, you are the place, and he pretty much made peace with it. And whenever you have a sense of loss, you always say, Hashem, you are the place. What does it mean that Hashem is the place? And think about this. A person just had lost. This is the only thing that is comforting to him. Okay, so we're also going to talk about, the loss and the challenge and everything else, but we're going to get to it. So what do you say? Hamakom yenachem etchem. The place will comfort you. Yes? If anyone ever has felt any type of loss in their life, I don't know you, but I could speak from a personal experience. I feel like the loss in itself is not what you lost, but is your sense of losing yourself in the lost. Someone that loses someone that they love, the question is like, how can I go on without you? You're part of like my celebration. I don't know how to celebrate without you. Miriam Perez, she lost 2 children, and she always goes and she comforts all of the mothers of the soldiers, and she says like, every time that the holiday is coming, she calls them and she tells them like, you're going to be okay. Because for them, what is hard with the holiday, like now my son that always used to sing Haggadah, is not going to sing Haggadah. It's not the loss in itself, but it's, I don't know how to go on without you. Like if you're not part of my life, I don't know how life makes sense. And this sense of loss, we don't just have it when we lose someone. For example, when I gave birth to my second daughter, she's called Shira Bracha. She was born on Erev Pesach. So my house burned down at the same time I gave birth to my daughter. Okay, this was very special. We're not going to go into details, but I always say I did biur chametz lemehadrin. Mehadrin mina mehadrin. I literally was giving birth, and my house burned down. At the same exact moment, I was homeless. It was just like crazy. And, people always think like, I remember last year, there was all of the fires in LA. So then all of the people that obviously did not have a fire were like, okay, so you lost your material belongings. Some of the people that lost their houses were celebrities. We're sure they can get new ones. No, it has nothing to do with the material loss. It has everything to do with everything you've built all of your life is lost. You have to start from zero. There's no sense of who I am. There's no memories. There's no this. There's no that. But it's also like, how do I move on right now? Like, what am I going to do? I remember because I actually had my students, Baruch Hashem made me a campaign. And then apparently when you get money, pain is forgotten. Everyone's like, oh, so this is great. You got a campaign. Now you're rich. I'm like, no, I'm not rich because this is Israel. And $1 million cannot even buy you a 1-bedroom. But I didn't get $1 million. What I'm saying a joke. But I was like, this doesn't take away from that. I'm still like homeless with a baby, another child. I'm like, what am I doing from here? There's this sense of like, I cannot explain to you the instability that you feel, the insecurity. I don't know what I'm doing in my life. Like, I don't know where we're going to go from here. And, I remember even reading that, moving gives you the same amount of trauma that getting divorced. The same amount of trauma that getting divorced, which is like the biggest trauma. And I moved 6 times in 6 months. With all of the things that we were getting along the way. Anyways, too much story, but you could read about it in my book. But what is the point? The point is, it was crazy. And when I had that loss, I understood what it means to lose. You just can't find your place. You don't know where you belong. You don't know what's going on. So now listen to a beauty of this. Yes? There's a very famous saying in the Kabbalah that says, I'm going to explain it. I'm going to say it in Hebrew and then I'm going to explain it. Before I say it in Hebrew, just so that you can understand the beauty of what I'm going to say. If I would ask you, where is God? What would you say? Think about, don't just say like a religious answer. Just say whatever comes to your mind. What would you say? This is a beautiful answer. This is what happens when you've been studying Torah for a long time. But most people would just say, God is in the world. God is everywhere. When I ask people, what was there before the world? You know what people always say? Nothing. Yes? Is this the automatic answer people would give? What was there before the world? Nothing. So then that means that you pretty much decided that God cannot exist without the world. Yes, because you cannot fathom that there was God when there was no world. Yes? Think about it. When you are talking to God, when you're praying, all of us have a sense of, direction, imagination, visual for God, which is not allowed in the Torah, but all of us do because we don't know how to refer to something that we cannot touch, that is completely abstract. Now listen to this line in the Kabbalah. This line is huge when you understand it. It goes, I'm going to say it in Hebrew, then I'm going to translate. Lo ha'olam hamakom shel Hashem, ela Hashem hamakom shel ha'olam. It is not that the world is the place of God, but rather God is the place of the world. I'll repeat in Hebrew and in English for all of you great students taking notes. Okay? Lo ha'olam hamakom shel Hashem, ela Hashem hamakom shel ha'olam. It is not the world that is the place of God, but rather God is the place of the world. I'll tell you what is beautiful about it. Everything that exists needs a place to be. And you're only aware of the existence of anything as long as you can be aware and conscious of whether that anything is in the place where it exists. You got what I just said? I know it's confusing, but I'll explain. Yes? If you have your car keys, you have a place for your car keys. Now, how do you know if you have your car keys? You will always go to a place of your car keys to look at your car keys. If you go to a place and your car keys are not in that place, you automatically think you lost your car keys because everything has its place. And if something doesn't have a place, then it cannot just be floating. It cannot just be lost. Yes? Now, everything that exists not only needs a place to be, but your awareness of that which exists is totally dependent on its place. Okay? And therefore, the place is always absolute. The thing is always relative. I put my car keys all of the time on my bag. My bag has to be, because that's where I'm going to go find my car keys. Okay? But my car keys might not be in my bag. So the car keys for me are relative. The bag is not relative. By the way, that's the whole concept of Shabbat when we call, mukse hamakom. Yes? If you always have something in a place, so the place, it's always mukse, because when you're going to that place, you're going to look for the mukse, even if the mukse is not on that place. Yes? Because the place always has to be. You took out all of the money from your, I don't know how you call this, your drawer. Okay, I can't say this with my Spanish accent. Your drawer. You could have taken it out, but usually, you don't even know that. The drawer is the place for the money. So it is mukse. Yes? Now, beautiful. We always say that God is in the world. What we don't realize is that we're making it look like the world is, but God is not. The world exists, but maybe God went on a tiyul. Maybe God is missing. And this is how most of us feel in our lives, if you ever think about it. We're all aware of God. Yes? But we're not really, aware of God. We know God as a concept. Do you feel Him in your life all of the time? Do you live with Him all of the time? I'm going to say some things that are going to be a little stark, but I'm going to say them anyways. I'm not saying I live on this level, but I just want you to really think about it. There's a famous, the Chafetz Chaim said that whenever a person sins, even if it's by mistake, it's because at the moment that you sinned, you were an apicorsus. You were a heretic. This is the Chafetz Chaim. Did it ever happen to anyone that you, by mistake, turn on the light switch on Shabbat? Okay, you're an apicorsus at that moment. Did it ever happen to you that you saw someone religious eating something and you were like, it's for sure kosher, and then you realize it's not? Yes? At that moment, you were an apicorsus. Now, let me tell you why this is so hard. If you do a sin by mistake, do you get punished? You don't get punished, according to God, but you would still bring a korban. That means that even though you don't get punished, there was a lack on your soul, but you're not getting punished. So why are you bringing a korban? It was an unintentional sin. You were not aware of it. You know why you're bringing a korban? Huge. Because the whole point is why it's a korban. You're bringing a korban to be close to God. If you did something by mistake, it means you were far from God. Because if not, you would never do anything by mistake. Think about it. The opening line on the Shulchan Aruch is Shiviti Hashem lenegei tamid. I've put Hashem in front of me always. What does this line mean? Pirkei Avot says, know that there's an eye that sees you, an ear that listens to you, and all of your actions are being written on a book. I always say to my students, when you go to a wedding and the camera guy comes and he goes like, everyone say Mazel Tov, and everyone is fixing their hair and, taking out the food from their teeth because obviously no one ever eats, all looking like this because we don't eat ever. Anyways, you want to look perfect because you're going to be in that video forever. You know what Shiviti Hashem lenegei tamid means? There's a camera 24/7. That Torah says that the Vilna Gaon one time said that one day there's going to be advancement on technology so that you can have advancement on Irat Shamayim. People never used to realize what it means. There's an eye that sees you and an ear that listens to you. But now you have something in your cell phone called the algorithm. I don't even know what it is. You check that you want to buy something. Now, the whole entire time, it just shows you all of... The other day, I wanted to get like hookah shoes because I run and they told me they're the best. I'm very angry. My phone gave me this like hookah shoes outlet. And I bought fake. Fake hookahs. Okay, let's not discuss this. This is very painful. They were obviously cheaper than regular hookahs, but very expensive for cheap hookahs. I'm so embarrassed. Anyways, so... if anyone wants hookahs, has hookahs they don't want, you can give them to me. I will value them. But anyways, yesterday they got to my home and I was like, they're for sure Chinese. They came packed on the same package as AliExpress. Everything is my cell phone's fault. One time I remember I was yelling at someone and then WhatsApp recorded it. And by mistake, and then send it on like the group chat, which is fine. Everyone yells, but no one gets caught on, WhatsApp, But that's how you understand what Irat Shamayim is, which I will get to a concept of Irat Shamayim soon. No one ever understood what it means that God sees your every move, but now there's Google Earth. You can see the car that was parked on the street. It's like a crazy thing. That's what it means, Shiviti Hashem lenegei tamid. Thank God for our phones that listen to everything we say. Now let me ask you, if you really live with God, would you ever make a sin by mistake? For sure not. You know what's the first thing that you do when you go into a room? You check where the light switch is to make sure that you're not going to press it. You ever see gluten-free people, peanuts allergy? Do you think they see someone and they go like, well, they're eating it, it's okay? No, you read all of the ingredients to make sure that you're not going to die. But what do? It's okay, she's religious, she eats it, right? That means like we're not living 100% with the presence of God in our lives, right? That's just the way that it goes. And this is why I'll tell you something huge, something very beautiful and powerful. In the Torah, there are two ways of describing fear of God. One of them you call it Irat Shamayim. One of them you call it Irat Hashem. Yes? Which fear of God do we always pray that we have? Irat Shamayim. But Irat Shamayim is not directly directed to God like Irat Hashem. Do you ever think about this? But we always say, may Hashem give me Irat Shamayim. Everything you should be blessed with Irat Shamayim. Why do we call it Irat Shamayim and not Irat Hashem? Very, very deep. In the Torah, there was a famous guy called Bilam. The Torah says on the sixth plague, there was the plague of hail. Dam, Tzvardea, Kinim, Marov, Dever, Shchin, Barat. Seventh plague, okay? The plague of hail. It says in the Torah, and everyone that had fear of heaven put their things in, but whoever didn't have fear of God didn't put their things in. The Midrash says, who was the only one that didn't put their things in? Most people don't know. It's actually Bilam. In like their house, so that they wouldn't get destroyed with the hail. The Midrash says, who was the only one that didn't put their things in? Bilam. Bilam got all of his stuff destroyed. Do you guys know that Bilam was in Egypt? All of his stuff got destroyed in the plague of hail. Now, what do you know about Bilam? He was a prophet. The Torah says that there was no one like Moshe in the Jewish people. But outside the Jewish people, there was. He was called Bilam. Now, let me ask you, how can you have a level of prophecy, which literally means complete clarity on God? Yes? But then God is saying, I'm going to send a plague and you don't do anything. How could you have prophecy and not have Irat? Which one did I say? Hashem. How could it be? But I'm going to show you that we all do this. You know why there's two, and by the way, you could see this, like the whole personality of Bilam, it's like pretty like bipolar. He talks to God, and then the next day he's like, I'm going. And then he talks to God, he's not going, but then he's going. How could it be? Because it tells you what happens to all of us. All of us have Irat Hashem, but not all of us have Irat Shamayim. Irat Hashem means you have fear of God when God is showing himself to you. Your fear of God is directly dependent on God revealing himself in your life. All of us have periods when we have miracles, and then there's the war. And the day after Iran shooted 50 million rockets, everyone was like, okay, I'm doing tshuva because God is the real deal. Everyone has that. I just saw, obviously I cannot judge, but there was one of the people that survived Nova. Maybe you know who he is, but it doesn't matter. I'm not going to say too much because, there was this one person that survived Nova, you know Nova, the festival. Not going to give many details, but completely Chiloni, millions of tattoos, whatever you want. And then he became completely frum. He made a career, went all over the world. And I said to someone, let's see if he sustains it. Because obviously now I saw him on a different video with a different hostage. Again, I'm not judging, but he wasn't even wearing a kippah. Why? Because all of us have Irat Shamayim. All of us have Irat Hashem. Sorry, I'm getting, but not all of us have Irat Shamayim. Obviously, when I'm inspired, I got a shock, I'm going to see God. Why is the fear that we want to reach to call Irat Shamayim? Because Irat Shamayim means fear of heaven. Do any one of us have to look at the heaven constantly in order to know that the heaven exists? No, you could be Bar Minam Lo Aleinu in a tunnel, but you still know that heaven exists. Heaven is intrinsic to you. You know that reality. The reality that we want to get to in life is not Irat Hashem. It's not like whenever Hashem shows up and he talks to us, we believe in him, but if he doesn't, then we don't. Is that God is so real to me, like heaven is real to me. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to look up. I don't have to contemplate on it. There's an amazing book which I read, if you've never read it, you should read it. It's Out of This World. It's very simple and you would think it doesn't really say much, but it says a lot. You probably have heard of this book because it was written anonymously, because the rabbi that wrote it thought that if people know who wrote it, then they're not going to read it. So he doesn't want people to know. Now everyone knows who he is because he's #1 bestseller, like one of the Torah bestsellers in Israel. But it's actually called Bilvavi Mishkan Evne. Did anyone read this? Building a sanctuary in the heart. And the person that wrote it, pretty much his whole entire thing was everyone keeps halacha, but no one lives with God. And the whole entire book just tells you how to build a reality in which you live with God. It's very simple, but very profound book, because we all have that. We all have Irat Hashem. It's in English, just so you know, building a sanctuary in the heart. But we don't all have Irat Shamayim. So now let's go back. Yes? We all think, or at least that's how we express our thing, that God is in the world. We don't even realize it, but what that means is like sometimes you see God, sometimes you don't see God. Sometimes we feel like God went on a tiyul, like literally, like, are you sure you're running this world with whatever is going on with Hamas? Maybe you're not running the world with whatever is going on with Hamas. Sometimes we feel that in our own lives. I'm not going to talk a lot about pain today because that's not like the concept that I'm teaching right now. But there's a very famous person called Eov in the Torah. Eov is the representative of someone that went through pain in his life. Some people say he exists. Some people say he doesn't exist. I'm not going to give you the whole thing. But one of the lines in the book, it's Out of This World. Eov says to God, could it be that a storm passed in front of your face, and instead of thinking I was Eov, you thought I was Oyev? Instead of thinking that I was Eov, you thought I was Oyev, same letters, different order. Maybe you thought I was your enemy. Do any one of you think like that every once in a while? I think like that all of the time. God, I have other siblings. Pick on them. It's not like I want wrong for everyone. I just want everyone to share the load. Why should I carry it alone? But anyways, I just thought about it so much because now that the hostages came back, So I'm pretty sure that you're aware that there was this whole thing in Israel because everyone was thanking President Trump. No one was thanking Netanyahu. Everyone was really angry, and then there's all of the people that want Netanyahu to quit. And I was just thinking about this. How hard is it to say, obviously, Netanyahu has something to do with this, but why is it so important to thank Trump, to not thank Netanyahu, to all of this? Because at the end of the day, and by the way, you think about it, all of these people standing in Kaplan, in Tel Aviv, they're I guess, the woke from Israel. I guess you would call it like that. They're the leftist. And their strong core belief is that there's no one running the world. There's no God. Everyone has, free choice. And therefore, if the hostages weren't returned for 1 year, it's Netanyahu's fault. Instead of understanding, no, there's a God that runs the world. But they live without God. So they have to find someone that they could blame. And they have to find someone that they could thank. That's just the way that it goes. Which is actually funny because Trump is, Republican. But it doesn't really matter, but that's exactly the point. These people would have never voted for Trump, But now it's Trump. Because if I cannot thank Trump, then I cannot blame Netanyahu. That's just the way that it goes. And you see this with everything in the world. You have to blame someone. We do this all of the time. Your kid spilled something, you have to blame him. It cannot be that God decided that it should spill. Everything has to have a blame. Everything has to have a source, a purpose. Yes? So we live with God, but we're not aware of God. Sometimes we think, maybe God got confused. It literally doesn't make sense that you're doing this to me again. Or why? It doesn't make sense. We'll talk about it all of the year. That's not the point that I'm teaching right now, but all of us think. But then comes Kabbalah. I think it's and what does it says? Lo haolam hamakom shel Hashem. It's not that God is in the world, but the world is in God. Huge. God is always. Sometimes the worlds get lost in God. But God is constant. Look at what I'm going to tell you now because this is huge. God is constant. You're lost in God. So you can't feel God. You're lost, but you're lost in God. When I was little, I loved playing Mario Bros. Maybe you're not going to remember this. Maybe you'll remember this from your kids. I have no idea. In Mario Bros, you had these gates. Doors, Mario Bros. Taran-tan, taran-tan. Hey, you had these doors that were phantom doors. You would open it, and then you would fall in nothingness. Sometimes you would fall in nothingness, and there would be a pool of coins. And sometimes you would fall in nothingness, and there would be all of these bombs being shot at you. Yes? Now, I'm very good at Mario, so the first time you fall, you're traumatized because you don't know what's happening. But the second time, you're if it's the coins, you know how to get them. If it's the bombs, you know how to not get them. You go like this, right? Every 5 seconds. And then I realized that's our lives. When you're falling, you're in the midst of everything. You don't know where the edges are. You don't know what's containing you because you're in the air. Does that make sense what I'm saying right now? Yes? You're in the air. But you know what? When you hit the bottom, then you realize you were always contained. But you would have never had that awareness unless you would have hit the bottom. You know how people always say, when you hit the bottom, there's nowhere else but up? It's not only because you hit the bottom, it's certainly because when you hit the bottom, you realize, where were you all of the time? You had no idea when you were in the middle. I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying, but, sometimes when people are doing well, they forget why they're doing well. Because you're just floating. There's not one hostage that came out of the tunnels that is not more religious. It's an amazing thing when you think about this. I just heard a podcast of 2 secular Israelis talking about how could it be that in the darkest place in the world, suddenly everyone has emunah. And one of the things that they said is because only when you have such darkness can you then contrast it with light and realize that all of the time that there was light, you didn't understand what light looked like. Suddenly you're like, oh, this is what God is. But I had no awareness of God because I was just hanging out. I feel like this is for everyone's life. Sometimes you're just floating, but you don't realize who's containing you. You don't realize what's the edge. You don't realize what's anything. when people are doing very well, they don't do tshuva, they don't change their lives. Most people in the planet, they only do tshuva when they had something that awakened them. Almost everyone. And forget it, it's not even tshuva, it's just finding direction in life. Most people think it's me, I'm doing well, I'm doing this, whatever. They have no awareness of God. They have no awareness that God is sending them. But suddenly when you hit the bottom, you're like, oh, I wasn't in space. I was just in God. I just didn't realize that I was inside of God. I just didn't realize that God was containing me the whole entire time. And when you realize that, it like changes everything. Not only does it changes, it gives purpose to everything, but it also gives this sense of humility. You thought the whole entire time you're sustaining yourself, but you're not sustaining you. There's something else. There's something that's much bigger than you. And if you understand that, you understand why you have to hit rock bottom. You are in God. The one that's lost and the one that doesn't realize he's in God, it's you. Maybe that's why Eov, I always think about this. Eov compared everything to a storm. But in Hebrew, the word for storm is a se'ara. Yes? Se'ara means more like a twister. Yes? What is a twister? Everything is there, but everything is not in its place. And that's why it's damaging. Because we think everything is out of place in the world. Everything is disorganized. We don't really realize. By the way, you want to know something amazing? You know what God answered him? Deep. God answered him, you're blaming me of running this world like a se'ara, like a storm, when in reality, I run it kehut se'ar, with the precision of a hair. This is the source, one of the sources for why we cover our hairs. Eov, connection, who would have ever thought? Pain, hair, what does that have to do with anything? You're accusing me that I run it like a storm, but in reality listen to this, kehut se'ar, with the precision of a hair. I'm not going to give you a class on hair covering right now, but I'm pretty sure you're going to appreciate this. Does anyone know what's the purpose of hair? What's the purpose of hair? What does science says is the purpose of hair? So most people think it's protection. It protects your scalp. Do you know that science says there's no purpose for hair whatsoever? Do you know that? There's no purpose for hair whatsoever. By the way, does anyone know how much hair you have? When I got married and became frum, so I was very, very frum back then. So I used to shave like these parts, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be bald. When you give birth and for 6 months in a row, you don't want to wash your hair? Because every time you wash your hair, you lose so much hair that you think you're going to be bald forever, but then you still have hair. You're like, wow, I have a lot of hair. Now, let me tell you one of the most incredible things about hair. Do you know that each hair has a pore from which it nurtures? Each hair individually has a pore. No two hairs share the same pore. If you have two hairs on the same pore, that's called an ingrown, and it hurts. I'm talking specifically for the head, but this is for everything. How much hair do you have? Trillions of hairs. Each one of them is taken care of. You know what God says? You're accusing me of running the world like a storm, but even your hair, which was no purpose except for cosmetics, I'm taking care of it with such detail. Very deep, huge, right? This is why we cover our hairs. When you wake up in the morning and you look like a storm? You know what I'm talking about? Yes, but then you comb your hair. Suddenly every hair has a place. That's why we braid challah. When you have too much, it's just overwhelming. But when you braid it, suddenly everything has a place. You realize it's not like things didn't have a place. It's like you were not in place. You were just lost, especially women, by the way. Women get overwhelmed by everything. Women, we have issues. We're like all over the place. We're crying about things that never happened. Thinking about what's going to happen to our 5-year-old when he's 20, but he's still 5. Like, chill out. You have 15 years to deal with that. Crazy. So God says, put it all into place. It's huge. So sometimes you feel like you're falling, but then when you fall, you realize, so now look at the beauty of this. Yes? You know what a person feels when they have lost? They feel they're lost. They're nowhere. But what is it that you want to know? You want to know that you have stability. Everything will work out. You have where to go. There is control. There is direction. There is purpose. There is someone holding you. And therefore, which name of God do you use? The place. God is the place. He's not going anywhere. You might get lost. But whenever you decide to stand firm, you will see that you were always standing on something that was whole. You will see that you were always standing on firm ground. And if you ever notice this, the only way for people to cope with the pain of mourning, which by the way is such a big difference between the people that survive October 7th and have emunah and the people that don't have emunah. It changes their whole entire life. Is you understand that there's someone holding the floor. You know, I always say, like, I don't know if hope you get this in the way that I want you, but I always say, like, all of life is realizing that wherever you're falling, you're always falling into Hashem. You know, you're not just falling, you're falling into God. Falling, like lipol. But if you wouldn't have fall, you would have never realized that you were in God. You would have just been floating in space, having a nice time. You would have never realized that you were falling into Hashem. We're going to get to where is God, wherever you let him in. But think about this first. That's what it means, wherever you let him in. You're always falling into Hashem. Hashem is containing you. Hashem is securing you. You are lost. But that's why sometimes God needs to push you to the edge so that you're able to feel him. And you're in the edge and you're going crazy. But suddenly the edge becomes the only way out. The edge becomes the solution. You know, one of my favorite lines, this is like a line that I always say, is sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to realize God is the rock at the bottom. You like that line? It's a great line. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to realize God is the rock at the bottom. Until you got to a bottom, you didn't know God was the rock in the bottom. The bottom is the greatest gift in the world. You know, where would the hostages be in their spiritual sense if they wouldn't have touched the rock bottom? Where would the Jewish people be if they wouldn't have touched the rock bottom? So now let's go back. Yes, everyone gets all of this concept? So now when a person is sitting Shiva, Bar Minam, they feel completely lost. So the only thing that comforts them is knowing you might get lost, but wherever you want to come back, your place is always waiting for you. Your place is always holding you. You can't get lost because God is always drawing you in. God is always taking you wherever you need to go. And that's the only thing that can comfort a human being. But now let's take it to a next level. Yes, beautiful. So where is God? Okay, so here I'm going to have to say a lot of things and we're not going to finish them today. So we're going to, you know. But let's go back to a whole concept of fear of God and feeling God and all of these things. So now this whole question of where is God, again, it's one of the biggest questions between the Vilna Gaon and the Baal Shem Tov and between Halakha and all of these things. So now, obviously, you know, we're not going to go into philosophy, but you can't say God is anywhere or everywhere because in order to be, you have to occupy space. Yes? If you don't occupy space, so you cannot be anywhere, but you could also be everywhere. Yes? Beautiful. Whenever we say the Hasara Amidah, which is, by the way, the most important part of the prayer. I don't know if people know this. You know, I remember one year I used to live in Panama, and now everyone is, everyone has grown so much in Panama, but like the Hagim were like, Shul was like the shuk. You know, it's when you go to find out everything about everyone, the fashion show. You know, I remember one time I went to like the lady that used to wax my legs, and she was Christian, and she was like, I just have one question. Like, you know, I went to a bar mitzvah of one of my clients, and you know, by us, when we have like mass on Sunday, everyone behaves so well. By you, it's like the shuk, you know, it's like literally. And I go like, yeah, this is why we're not doing so well. This is why the Arabs always have extra points above us, you know, because Hakol Kol Yaakov, Ve'ayadayim Yedei Esav, our strength is the call, the voice. But if you look at Ishmael, they daven a little bit more, a little bit better, you know, 5 times a day on the floor, no one mutes, you know. They do Netilat Yadayim and Netilat Raglaim. But anyways, you know, and their name is literally Ishmael. If you pray, I will listen to you. This is why the Arabs are very successful in everything they do, because they're very dedicated to their prayer, and they stole our weapon, and they're amazing at it. You know, but that's a class for a different day. So, I got religious. I was like one of the only people religious there. So one Yom Kippur, I printed a whole entire page. It says, if you go to shul to speak, where will you go to daven? But, the Torah literally says, if you ever look at the destruction of the Jewish people anywhere, it always started by the shuls. Gush Katif, Kristallnacht, everything else. Because the word dever, which means plague, is the same as the word davar, which means to speak. And whenever a person speaks, so not going to go into details, but I'll just say one line that's very strong, that there's only one sin in the Torah that the Torah says is what Cain said, the punishment is harder than what I can hold, and that is talking in shul during the Hazara Amidah. Because the Hazara Amidah is the most important part of prayer. It's literally the only time that you can say Kedusha. Yes, the Hazan, all of what he does is to get ready for the Kedusha. So you cannot even do your own, if you stay longer saying your Amidah, but they're going like Kadosh, 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 you have to be silent. You cannot be in your own Amidah while they're saying Kadosh, for that, not for everything, but for that part. Yes? Beautiful. So let's go into the Hazara, which is the main thing. You're inviting God. Yes? What do you say every single day? Kadosh, 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 Melo kol haaretz kevodo. By the way, if you say the Hazara, you go Vekara ze el ze ve'amar, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. You're talking about where is God. Nekadesh et shimcha, shimcha ba'olam. You're filling the world with God's presence. Beautiful. Yes? Where is God? So what do you say in Hebrew? Melo kol haaretz kevodo. Who wants to translate?
His honor fills the whole world.
God fills the whole world with what? With His honor. God is in the world through His honor. If there's no honor of God, that space doesn't have God, whatever that means. I'm going to go into that in a second. Yes, but think about this. What is the honor of something? Do you give honor to everything? No. Yes? We should, because Pirkei says respect your friend, whatever you want, but we don't. Yes? To what do you give honor? Honor depends on two things. Honor depends on your awareness of someone's greatness or of someone, but it also depends on your awareness of their existence. I'll explain what that means. Let's say you have your favorite Rebbetzin Chira Smiles, right? And, she is, her. So you're going to give her honor because you know who she is. Yes? Now, if someone doesn't know who Rebbetzin Smiles is, maybe they'll give her honor. Hopefully they have good midot because she's, older than them or something like that. But they're not necessarily going to give them honor. Why? Because she's just another person. Yes? They don't know who she's in front of. You've ever been in front of someone that's very important and they're like, oh my God, you were him. I had no idea. If I would have known who you were, I would have treated you very differently. Now, let's say it's Purim and Rebbetzin Chira Smiles is wearing a disguise. Now, you know who Rebbetzin Chira Smiles is, but you don't know who she is on Purim because she's wearing a disguise. Yes? Beautiful. Giving honor to someone depends on two things. Number one, knowing who they are. And number two, knowing their greatness and being aware of it. You can't give honor to everyone. Everyone knows there is a God. But not everywhere God is honored because not everyone has an understanding of who God is. Yes? Where is God? I'm going to finish with this, but I'm going to explain this next time because then I don't want to start something that I'm not going to be able to finish it. God is only Melo kol haaretz kevodo, where people are aware of His presence and His greatness. I'm going to say a heavy line, but you have to wait till next year so I'll explain it. Maybe I'm going to get in trouble for saying this line now. Even though God is everywhere, Godliness is not everywhere. God is in Tel Aviv. Godliness is not in Tel Aviv. You can go to Tel Aviv and you can feel that. God is in Tel Aviv for sure. God doesn't depend on you knowing He is in order to be. Godliness, what we would call the Shekhinah, yes? You ever hear how the Midrash says that the Shekhinah stepped away from the world when there was a sin? And whenever you do a Kiddush Hashem, the Shekhinah comes close. What do you mean? God can just come and go? No. God cannot come and go. God is everywhere. But where do you feel God? Because it's not about feeling someone. It's about knowing someone. It's not the same. If I have a bottle of water and you see the water inside and I would ask you, is my bottle full or empty? What would you say? Full. If I take the water out of my bottle, now you're going to think philosophically because I'm teaching philosophy, but if I take out the water from my bottle and I ask you, is my bottle full or empty? What would you say? Empty. It's not empty. It's empty of water, but it's full of air. You're just not aware of the air. And it changes your whole entire, For a lot of people, the world is empty of God. I'm going to call it godliness, but it's only because they're not aware of God. And how does that work? We'll deal with that next time. I'll answer questions now. Yes?
Yeah, I was going to say also the manifestation.
Great outfit, by the way. Amazing outfit. So colorful.
I thought about you when I
Thank you so much.
the manifestation of Hashem, meaning Hakol bara lichodo. We say that to the Chatan and Kala.
Yeah.
Everything was created for His honor.
Yeah.
So the more Hashem and godliness is manifested in the world.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is everything is created by the honor of God, but it doesn't matter if you don't see the honor of God. Do you understand the difference? I'll just give an example, but I'll explain this better next time. There are people that live as if every leaf from the tree falls from the tree. Yes? You have these people that they were like, oh my God, I was in the train and I saw this person, and obviously God wanted me to see this person. Yes? But then there are people that are completely clueless. Now imagine I send you a check for $1,000. You get the check and it doesn't say the name. Yes? Now you have two options. One option is like, oh my God, I just got $1,000 in the mail out of nowhere. That's so amazing. Or one option would be like, okay, $1,000 checks don't just end up in the mail. Someone must have sent it. Yes? In both scenarios, you are $1,000. But both scenarios are completely opposite of each other. In one of them, you're going to go pursue who gave you the check, develop a relationship, say thank you, millions of things, and maybe you'll get much more checks. In one scenario, you'll be clueless, and it's not going to change you in any way because you're never going to find out why you had $1,000. It changes everything. I always say, like, real awareness changes everything. Imagine you have $1 million in the bank, but you do not know you have $1 million in the bank. Do you have $1 million in the bank? Do you or no? So people always say yes. What would you do if you had $1 million in the bank right now? Yeah, would you do something with it? She's like, no, I save it. Jewish people, we always save money. Technically speaking, if I had $1 million in the bank, I would do something with it. But if I don't know I have them, I can't do anything with it. Yes? So do I have them? So if you want to give a right answer, you could say, in theory, yes. In practice, no. You don't have $1 million in the bank. If you have $1 million in the bank, but you're not aware, you don't have them. You don't have them. It doesn't change anything in your life. God, if you want the answer without the class, nothing happens without God. But when you don't live with God, it doesn't matter. Because you're not going to be tracking anything back to God, so it doesn't make a difference in your life. It doesn't make a difference in anyone's life. So nothing happens without God. But for someone that doesn't live with God, doesn't matter at all, because it's not according to God's perception, it's according to your perception. Who cares what God does? It's according to you. So that's the answer without teaching the class. But think about it, because it changes everything. So yeah, Hakol bara lichvodo. But if you don't see it, there's no point. You could totally get to a wedding where there's all of these fancy decorations and just concentrate on the dessert buffet. And you don't notice that everything was made lichvodo. Yeah? Anyone else has a question? Okay. Too much philosophy for one day. Okay, fine. But this is practical philosophy, you know? Beautiful. Have a great day. See you guys.